So when we're planting a tree, you want the hole to be 2 to 3 times as wide as the root system or the root ball of the tree that you're planting. So usually a shovel is a good measurement. So I'll start the hole here to there, and I'll actually turn it again. So we'll have about a 5-foot diameter hole. The tree that we're planting is not a typical stock material for a tree that people are used to seeing. It's not balled and burlapped, and it's not in a container. It's not in a pot. These are bare root trees. I bought them bare root. They came to me that size, just bare root. They're less expensive that way because you're not paying for shipping of heavy root balls and all that material, but you also get the tree's entire root system. When you have balled and burlap trees, you can lose up to 90% of the tree's root system when they dig it out of the nursery. So the trees are in shock from the moment they're dug. When they're at the other retail nurseries, they're under constant irrigation and fertilization. In a sense, like in an ICU, they're just having everything they need pumped into them to keep them alive. When they come out to a field situation like this, everything gets turned off. They get watered this time, and then it's up to whoever is caring for the tree to make sure they're getting what they need. So you can lose a lot of balled and burlap trees just through neglect or just not getting the care that they were used to getting until that root system gets established. Avoid all of that with bare root trees. When we plant this in this site soil, we're going to put all the soil back into the hole, so that tree's root system is going to have 100% contact with the soil that's all here. There's no different soils in the root ball. There's an interface problems that occur with water hydration movement. So let me start digging this. I like to take the vegetative layer off the surface before I start digging, because I don't want to put any of this back into the hole. I want to get all the grass out. And we can look at that. Try to make it as round as you can, if that's what you're into. Administration at UK likes things very, very precise. That's sort of round. Won't stress over it too much. So this kind of shovel is really important for being able to just remove the sod layer efficiently. They do make machines called sod cutters that could do this, but when you're just planting a couple trees, it doesn't take that long. $100 to $200, give or take. I mean, last year in the spring for the reforested bluegrass 20-year anniversary, we planted 42 trees right in this area with community volunteers and students in about 2 hours. So that was just, that one day period, we got 42 trees in the ground. And then my department, between my department and the development contracts and the things that go on campus, some of the development projects will plant like 50 trees on one project. Because we're not going to put any of this back into the planting hole, and when you just have soil on a tarp next to it, you can just take that soil and backfill. When you come in and people start, I'm going to dig a hole, I'm going to plant this tree, and you dig this up, there's a lot of soil that's really good and attached to that, but now it's mixed up with all of this, and it's a lot harder to backfill your tree when you're planting. It's a lot easier to keep the site clean that you're working too, because I mean, the work is pretty hard, and there's no reason to make it any harder. So if you have a job, if you're doing this for yourself, it's just easier on yourself, really. If you're doing this commercially, it gets your job site cleaned up a lot quicker, and you make more money. So, and this stuff, crabgrass, Bermuda grass, you don't want this stuff in your planting hole with your tree. So if you're able to just get it removed, you don't have that competition. You can do this with a round point shovel. It's not as efficient because of the curve of the shovel, but you can do it if that's all you have. That is roughly a good circle. So then I like to put the soil on a tarp just to help keep the job site clean. We're actually replacing a tree that we planted last spring. So when we did this last spring, we had a machine that had a big auger on it that drilled these holes. So it's making it a little easier to dig today because they have been pre-dug a year ago. Yeah, these two didn't make it. Just watering and heat, and not every tree you plant survives. I mean, but that's the other benefit of bare root trees, is you can see the tree's root system going into the ground, so you know what you're starting with. If you have a balled and burlap tree, you can't see that root system, you don't really know exactly what you're getting. So I want to save the soil and get rid of that. No, that was just this weedy grass. All these white roots like this. That's just not something you really want in your growing around your tree. Turf and other things will compete with the tree for water and nutrients. So that's one reason why you make the hole so big, is just to remove all the competition and make it as easy for the tree to establish as possible. Yeah, we'll actually, this is a great time of year to plant because we don't have to do a whole lot after today. But we will put water bags on the trees and come around and water them. We don't really fertilize our trees. Just using an organic mulch is really all you need to do. It's pretty easy to over-fertilize a tree. And if a tree is over-fertilized, it has a lot more insect and disease problems. So it's really better just to give them some organic mulch, make sure they got good soil moisture, and let them do their thing. All right, so one of the things we need to think about with our bare root trees is that root system has to stay wet throughout this entire process. So we had these healed into a wood chip holding bed. They were actively watered as they were removed. They were placed in the truck and healed in with wood chips, and they were watered again. So when we get them out of the truck, we're going to water it as it comes out, set it in the hole, water it, start backfilling, and water as we backfill. I think we're ready to do that now. So let me turn that water back on and we'll bring the tree over. Okay. You can't carry a bottom burlap tree with one hand. And this tree has a very substantial root system. So we need to dig our hole a little bit deeper. Go ahead and soak all that down. Actually, soak it down right here. And let's see.
Can you hold it up?
Sure. And just keep the water going on it. All right.
Water it down?
Yeah, go ahead and put some water on it, and then we can start backfilling. So you want to try to get the trunk in the center of the hole. And you want to make sure the tree is straight, the trunk is straight up and down. You have to kind of stand back 10 or 15 feet to look at that. And it's looking pretty good. All right, that's good for water for right now. Try to throw it over the fibrous roots first so they just get covered up. And then throw them into the center. All right, go ahead and give it some water. Yeah, that'll help settle the soil particles around the roots. And then if you want to push it that way a little. Like that? Yeah, let me walk over here. Yeah, hold it right there. Actually, you can go a little bit more that way, just a tear. Just give it a little nudge. Now go ahead and let go and see what happens. All right, yeah, keep holding it, push it back to how it was. Keep holding it that right there. Yeah, you need to watch out for the big clumps. They're okay to have out on the edges, but you don't want a big clod right on top of the root system because you won't get really good contact that way. It's perfect. And then we'll just drag the tarp in and dump the rest on there and spread it out.
Yeah.
Just make sure we pull it off the trunk. We don't want that trunk flare. That's something I didn't talk a lot about in this process. But the tree has a trunk flare, this transition of the trunk to the root system, and that needs to be at the soil surface. So many trees, especially bottom burlap trees, the top of the ball is oftentimes here, and that trunk flare is way down there. And when trees are planted that deep, they slowly die. They don't establish, and there's really, people are just throwing money away. If this is an inch or so below, it's not the worst thing. As it grows, it pushes the soil away.
Yeah.
But if it's lower than that, the bark on the trunk will actually start to rot, and then the tree gets stressed, insects and diseases come, and it sits there for 2 or 3 years, and then it dies. So, but yeah, most bottom burlap trees that trunk flare is several inches below the top of that ball, so you have to excavate the top of the ball to find that trunk flare to know how deep to dig your hole. We had a tree yesterday we planted. The ball was about that deep. We took that much off the top of the ball. We only had a hole that needed to be that deep at that point. So,
Yep.
thank you.